This is Happiness Solved with America's happiness coach, Sandee Sgarlata.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. I am so happy you're here. So before I introduce today's guest, I want to share with you my 4 simple tips on self-love. You see, so many people are looking for love, and what they do not realize is that they need to learn to love themselves first in order to have a healthy, loving relationship with someone else or their soulmate. In a Psychology Today article by April Eldemeyer stated that more self-love will attract healthier relationships. So tip number 1 is forgive yourself and others. When you are holding on to bitterness for someone else or for yourself, forgiveness is essential. Remember, forgiveness is letting go of the bitterness so you are free to love instead. Tip number 2, stop comparing yourself. So often we compare ourselves to others, wishing we had someone else's looks, their money, their relationship, the car, the house. But when you compare yourself to someone else, all you're doing is reinforcing that you're not good enough. And you are good enough. Tip number 3, stop criticizing yourself. That critical voice in your head is sabotaging any chance to love yourself and to love someone else. Instead, talk to yourself like you are talking to a child that is upset, being gentle and compassionate. And lastly, tip number 4, accept yourself. You need to work on accepting yourself exactly the way you are. Understand and know that you are perfect. So if you'd like to learn more about me, you can visit my website at www.sandeesgarlata.com. So thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Today's guest is John Noltner. John is a gifted storyteller and has worked on 4 continents gathering stories of human courage, grace, and resilience. He has produced projects for national magazines, Fortune 500 companies, and nonprofit organizations. He has a project called A Piece of My Mind, which reflects his belief that art and storytelling can help individuals, organizations, and communities articulate their deepest values and encourage action toward building social capital and community connections. And I want to read a quote that he has on his website, and it says, "In a world that asks us to focus on the things that can separate us, a piece of my mind invites us to explore the common humanity that connects us." This is a great conversation, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, John, how's it going today?
It's going great. Thanks, Sandee. How about you?
Great. So I want to talk first about your adventure that you're on right now and that you're living in an RV. I think that is so cool. And I know so many people, or I've seen people on social media that are doing that. So how is that, and what made you want to do that?
You know, it's pretty delightful. And my wife, Karen, and I have been on the road full time now. We just passed the year mark. So we're living in a 34-foot travel trailer. We sold our house of 20 years in Bloomington, Minnesota, last fall. And, so far we still like each other. There are some accommodations and there's some learning curve involved. No matter how much you love and like the person you're with, figuring out how to do this dance in a small little rolling box, but we're loving it. You know, we set out with the goal of doing this for about a year, and 2 months into it, we said, "Oh man, a year is going to go fast." So right now we're thinking at least a couple of years, and then we'll see if we're still having fun.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's funny that you said that you still like your wife, because I joke around with my husband, and when we're like just having dinner with another couple, I'm like, the cool thing is 18 months into this, where we're both working from home, I still like the guy. I'm like, that's pretty good.
See, that's a major life victory right there.
It really is. Really is, because I love my alone time, and he respects it, and he gives it to me, so.
Yeah,
That
so
helps.
you have to find ways to navigate that together and say, you know what, I'm going out for a walk, or I'm going to go out taking photos this morning, and I'll be back at whatever time. And we actually did this because we weren't seeing each other enough. This project I work on, and I know we're going to get into this, but a piece of my mind pre-pandemic, it was keeping me on the road for 180 days a year. And
Wow.
so, that's not why we got married. We wanted to spend a little more time together, and we realized that we could afford two out of three things. We could afford for Karen to quit her job so we could be together. We could afford to continue making a house payment, and we could afford uh, to pay our own health insurance because our health insurance was through her job. We could have two of those three things, but not all three of them. So we were happy to give up the house payment, have her quit her job, and we could work together on the road.
Nice. Now, did she help you with your project?
You know, a piece of my mind is my project, and Karen helps with it, but she also does her own thing. She also does some virtual assisting, and so she helps me when I need a little bit of help, but mostly I go through the process on my own, and then we have our days and evenings together.
Nice. Well, that's fantastic. So let's just jump into a piece of my mind because I'm really curious about this project.
Yeah, this is a project I started a dozen years ago, and I've made my career as a freelance photographer. So I've always shot for national magazines and Fortune 500 companies, and I was increasingly frustrated with the quality of our national dialogue. I was concerned about all the things that ask us to look at what can separate us, and I wondered if there was something I could do with my skill set, with my photography and storytelling, instead to remember what connects us, to sort of rediscover that common humanity that we all share. And as luck would have it, I like to say the economy handed me some free time back
Yeah.
in the back in the recession, and this is what I did with it. So I started interviewing people from all different backgrounds, asking them, what does peace mean to you? How do you work towards it in your life? And we recorded an hour-long interview. I did a portrait to go along with it. And then we started sharing them out to the world. So at first, just online, and then in books and in exhibits. And so now we've got three books that share these stories and four traveling exhibits that go across the country. And we use these stories to talk about conflict resolution and civic responsibility and social change and basically how we can figure out how to live a little better together.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's incredible because we need that so desperately now more than ever.
Oh, yeah, more and more every day. And, this started out as a small little personal project, but it just continued to grow organically. And now it's all that we do.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much for that. That's just incredible. So, I was curious about like what is I want to hear one of the most profound stories that you've had to share. Can you talk a little bit about that? Is there
Oh
one
my
that comes to
gosh.
mind?
Yeah, all of them all at once come to
I'm
mind,
sure.
Sandy.
I'm
but
sure.
but there are some that really sort of rise up, and the first is the story that I started both of my last two books with, and it's the story of Hashim Garrett, who I met in New Jersey, and Hashim grew up in Brooklyn, and he was picked on as a young boy, and he was frequently scared in the neighborhood where he was, in the situation he found himself in, and he wondered eventually if he could, if his tormentors would stop tormenting him if he befriended them. And so he did, and that worked out okay for a little while. But then this group of kids that he was had befriended, well, they started skipping class, and they started stealing things from the convenience store, and they started hurting other people, and he found himself in a gang. And he said at first that was pretty intoxicating, that was pretty powerful, because he said when he was good nobody knew who he was, but when he was bad everyone knew his name.
Mm,
But eventually he got into conflict with the other gang members. They ambushed him, they shot him in the back, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. And he said when that happened, as he was laying on the ground, that's when he realized he didn't want to be feared. that he wanted to be loved. And he said that he realized that he wanted to be kind to those who may not deserve his kindness, and he wanted to love those who may not love him in return. And I think that awareness and that shift and that ability to extend our love and compassion and graces to, those that we might be at odds with, to me, that's the holy ground. That's the transformative sort of love, that can bridge divides and build community and lead us into, some sort of better future together.
Oh my goodness. Is he still paralyzed to this day?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah, he is, but he uses his story to work with young kids,
right.
and to encourage them to make positive choices in their life, to let them know that wherever they are today, it doesn't have to define where they're going to be tomorrow.
Right. Exactly. Wow. Yeah, I can see why you wanted to start your books with that story. That's
Well,
incredible.
and there are so many powerful stories like this that I've encountered. People who find themselves in really difficult situations, but they've made the choice to uh, lean away from hatred and lean towards healing. And those are the stories that continue to give me hope and encourage me in the world.
Right. So how many people have you interviewed thus far?
Oh, it's been hundreds. I mean, well over 100 just in the last year, and I'm scrambling drastically to try to get through the edits on these so that I can share them out. But these long form stories like this, we've done hundreds. I also produce some short form stories where I'll go into a community and we'll ask a prompt, and in a course of a day, I'll photograph 50 to 100 people and just take their 25-word response to whatever this prompt is, and use that as a way for the community to help articulate their mission, vision, and values. And we've done thousands of those at different engagements across the country.
Wow. So so a piece of my mind. So I know you've got the traveling show and you're interviewing people. Is it what is the whole purpose of you doing this? Is it to put out more books, or like what is at the end of the day, what is your goal with this?
Yeah, I mean, we share these stories in all sorts of different formats. We share them online, we share them in books and exhibits, in public workshops, and the goal is to encourage dialogue. The goal is not to give people the secret meaning of peace, but encourage people to recognize that if there are problems in the world, that these are our problems, and if there are going to be solutions, they're going to have to be our solutions collectively.
Hmm.
So the overarching goal is to get people, to encourage people, one, to listen deeply, to be willing to hear those around them. Number two is to challenge their own expectations and be willing to acknowledge bias and challenge those and consider new possibilities. And the third is to encourage people to keep showing up. All of these difficult issues that we're talking about, if we're talking about violence or race or interfaith dialogue or politics or whatever it is we're talking about, as we look at some of the social issues that we face as a country, these are not short-term fixes. These are things that are going to require our intentional efforts to sort of bridge the divides and come together. And along the way, we're going to stumble. We're going to make some mistakes, but we hope to encourage people to keep coming back to the table, to keep being willing to build those relationships and look for solutions together.
Right. Exactly. Oh. We are going to take a quick break from today's interview because I am so excited to tell you about a new program that I've just rolled out. It includes 2 group coaching calls each month to help you create the lasting happiness you so desire. It's only a $50 a month investment in yourself, and you are worth it. So visit www.sandeesgarlata.com/courses to sign up. I hope you enjoy the rest of today's interview. So how do you find people? Like I mean,
Yeah,
like, how did you find the
it's a
guy in
great
New
wild goose
Jersey?
chase. Yeah.
Right.
Well, there are three ways, and the first is just good old journalistic research. My background is in journalism. That's my training, and I've spent much of my career in that world. And so I'm convinced if you want to talk to somebody who was involved with the civil rights movement back in the day, you can probably do a couple of Google searches and a couple of phone calls, and you can find people who have powerful stories to share. So I may reach out to a civil rights museum. I may reach out to, a civil rights organization, something like this, to try to find potential people to interview. The second way is to just plumb my natural networks. As I've done travel photography across the country, for a few decades, I've met a lot of people, and so if I want to find a shrimp boat captain down in Louisiana, I can contact a restaurant where I photographed down there, 20 years ago, find out where they get their shrimp, and do a little digging to lead to a potential subject there. And the third way is sometimes these folks just fall in my lap. I was in Mississippi, in Columbus, Mississippi earlier this year. I was really looking forward to a day off and just catching up on some editing. And I walked into a coffee shop and I started talking to the guy in line right next to me. And we got to talking, and it turns out his name is Neil Moore, and he was paddling in a canoe 7,500 miles across the country to try to remember what's beautiful about America, both scenic and human. And I thought, oh shoot, here we go again. I have to I have to sit down and interview Neil. So there went that day off, but it turned into this beautiful story. And so sometimes, you can plan and research, but sometimes serendipity just hands you uh, good solutions as well.
Well, and when that happens, you know in your gut it's meant to be.
Yeah, and you have to be willing to walk through the doors that open up. Sometimes you have to be willing to knock on those doors for a while before they open up, but sometimes they open for you.
Yeah. Wow. Now, with your talk a little bit more about your actual exhibit,
Hmm.
because not having seen one, I'm just curious, like what that looks like.
Yeah, and as people are listening, if they go to our website, they can see some photos of it. And it's just the easiest way to get to the website is just the acronym for the project. It's APOMM.net. You can click on programming, and there are all sorts of photos of the exhibits. And so we've got four different exhibits in three different formats. And the first exhibit I produced, I'm a photographer. I come sort of out of the art world, and so we produce these traditional 24-inch by 36-inch canvas gallery wraps that hang on a wall. And they've got a larger than life portrait of the person, they've got a little biography of who they are, and then an excerpt out of their interview from when we sat down together. And so that first exhibit was produced as a gallery exhibit, but I figured out pretty quickly that not everybody who was interested in the project had 150 feet of wall space to hang it on. And so we produced our next three exhibits as portable display banners. So the same sort of thing. You've got a large portrait of the person, you've got their biography, you've got a little excerpt from their story. But this time, these are freestanding, so we can set them up in college student unions. We can set them up in corporate headquarters, in the lobby. We can set them up in libraries and community centers or churches. And the goal was to have this as public art where people could use these stories to encourage conversation. And so we continue to find new ways to produce these exhibits so that they're really flexible and easy to install in any public space.
Hmm, interesting. Now, on your website, do you have a schedule of where you're going to be?
Yeah, at the top menu on the website, if you go to events, it will list the places that we have coming up, as well as if you scroll to the bottom, some of the dozens and dozens of places where we've been in the past.
Nice. Now, as far as like scheduling all of that, you know, is that I mean, how easy is it for you to get an exhibit, set up for a place? I mean, is there a lot of interest in this? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, well, of course, the pandemic offered us some challenges. We had built a robust schedule of public programming to support A Piece of My Mind. And then when public programming had to go away because of the pandemic, we took a hit. So this is actually part of why Karen and I went out on the road in the RV, because we realized that the public programming wasn't going to come back for a while, and we wanted to just focus on gathering new stories. And so we did a fundraiser. We flipped A Piece of My Mind into a 501c3, and changed the model of our support, and we got donations to be able to let us go out on the road to just gather new content. Now things are picking up again for the programming, and we go a lot to conferences. We go a lot to college campuses and schools, and faith communities. And these conversations, usually people are booking 6 months or a year out in advance. Now, as things are getting busy again, our spring starts looking pretty full, and we're moving a lot of engagements into the fall of 2022.
Great. That's fantastic. Now, do you do any sort of presentation with this or a workshop surrounding it, the
Yeah,
exhibit?
we do. It's a little bit like an octopus. There are so many different ways that folks can engage with this. My favorite is really like a week-long residency, and so we'll come into a community, we'll install one of our exhibits for the week, which sort of sets the tone, and it allows people a passive and personal engagement with these stories to sort of set the tone for the week. Then I'll often do sort of an introductory session, which is in the form of a workshop or a lecture, to talk about the power of stories to create positive change, and the power of stories to connect people. And also use that time to invite people to share their own stories. Then we'll set up for a day or two of gathering local stories. So this is the studio process I talked with you about before. And we've gone into communities and we've asked questions like, when have you found unexpected courage? We've asked, what's the unique opportunity or challenge of talking about race at this moment in history? We've asked, when have you bridged a divide? Or what sort of world do you want to live in? And over the course of a day or two of these studio stories, we'll gather 50 or 100 stories from the community. And then I do the production on them, and we do an end of week closing lecture, again, where I talk about this process of storytelling to connect, and then we share their stories back to them. So it turns into this really powerful opportunity for a community to start to see themselves and their peers in new ways.
Mm, that is so powerful. Wow.
We've never done this anywhere where people haven't said at the end, man, this was the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah.
That the people feel heard and seen and valued, and that's really a part of this process.
And it's so much of what is needed. And to
More
give
and more
people,
every day.
yeah, give people that kind of a safe space in which to share a piece of their mind, right?
Well, you know what, and it's really interesting. Yeah, you hear the play on words in that statement, a piece of my mind, because usually if someone says, I'm going to give you a piece of my mind, it's anything but peaceful. But you
True.
you switch the spelling from PIECE to PEACE, and it really becomes an opportunity for people to talk about what's close to their hearts, and people to really talk about what's important in their lives. And it's a powerful process. And yeah, I think that we individually and collectively are looking for tools to connect, and we don't always know what those tools are. But this winds up being a tool that can you know really really bring people together in a unique way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I love it. This is incredible. And I will definitely keep an eye out for your events and see if you come to a town near me.
You're in Virginia, right?
I'm in Virginia,
I'm
yes.
actually, when is it? You can see it on my website. It's either December or it's January. I'm the keynote speaker at a state conference for university extension professionals
Huh,
somewhere in Virginia.
okay. I'll have to check that out.
Maybe we can find an excuse for coffee
There
somewhere.
you go. That would be wonderful. John, this has been so great. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience today?
Well, you know what? I would love to close with a quick pitch for our new book. It was
Please do.
Just released September 21st with Broadleaf Books, and through it's called Portraits of Peace: Searching for Hope in a Divided America. And I'll tell you that when I started this project, one of the goals is to quiet my voice and to amplify the voices of others, and that's a worthy goal, and it fits in well with my journalistic background, but through a decade of working on this project, I realized that I had something to say as well. Something about taking risk and about encountering difference, challenging my own expectations, staying at the table. And so this new book is really my story, and it connects my journey, sort of this journey that I've been on to learn and to listen and to engage with folks across difference, and then it weaves in the stories of some of the wisdom and some of the folks that I've met along the way.
Mm.
So pretty excited about it. It's available anywhere that people love to buy their books. It's available hardcover. It's available as a Kindle book, and any day now there'll be an audiobook that comes out with it.
Nice. I love it. Well, John, thank you so much for sharing this such an important message and project that you're working on. I love it, and I really hope that I could come and see one of your exhibits someday.
I hope too, Sandee. It's great to talk with you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. What an amazing project and gift that John is bringing to the world. Please check out his website, which is apieceofmymind.net. And remember, peace is Peace. And check out his schedule of events and go check him out if he's in a town near you. So thank you so much for joining me today. You can learn more about my book, Happiness Solved: Climbing 100 Steps, at sandeesgarlata.com. And as always, I hope that you and your family stay safe and healthy, and that your lives are filled with peace, joy, and happiness. Take care, everyone.